Hey, it's that Deadeye guy. Let's talk about the Red Strings Club, developed by indie developer Deconstruct Team. The Red Strings Club is a cyberpunk quasi-adventure game that puts you primarily in the shoes of Donovan, the owner and proprietor of the club, and Brandeis, his close friend and social revolutionary. The game takes place in the not-too-distant future, where biological implants have become normal and a socially acceptable practice. Major corporations have become major world powers, barely kept in check by their respective governments. You must help Donovan and Brandeis uncover and thwart a major plot by one of these corporations to essentially control the entire population of the world through their biological implants, with the goal of erasing all negative human emotion. Donovan is a notorious information broker, and through his conversations and dealings with the various individuals who make their way to the Red Strings Club, you must obtain as much information about this nefarious plan in order to be able to help the punks as they try to stop it. This is primarily done through conversation, and with Donovan's infamous ability to craft drinks to suit the customer's mood. The different drinks served to them will loosen or tighten their lips about certain subjects, depending on the mood associated with it. Along the way, a damaged Akara android makes its way to the club. Once repaired, it serves as an observing companion to Donovan, questioning his ideas and interactions with various individuals. Through your actions, words, and decisions, the story unfolds to its ultimate climax, with Brandeis breaching the corporate headquarters in an attempt to shut down the program for good. The overall theme of the game really hits home early on, and I have to give props to the developer with doing so much with so little. This is a very small team, and even though it's evident that the assets that were developed for this game are pretty minuscule, you never really notice it as you play through. A large portion of the game takes place in the club. You would think that setting would get extremely boring after a while, but the story keeps you engaged in a way that you don't mind that much. The length of the game is fairly short, so I imagine that helps in that department as well. This was very obviously not a high-budget game, but was able to keep me engaged throughout its short playtime. A major point of transition between scenes and conversations is the change in music. While some of the transitions were a little jarring, I found the music to be overall pretty great, and their symbolism of the change in tone to what is happening on the screen was much appreciated. The overall theme definitely fit the cyberpunk genre, and helped make the game feel like a small ode to 80s synthwave. Reading through some of the comments of this title on Steam, I've seen quite a few comparisons to Spec Ops: The Line, with a few of the twists in the story. I really have to disagree with those sentiments. While said twists were intriguing, they were nowhere near some of the gut-wrenching plot points that were in Spec Ops. The various points within the Red Strings Club that would be considered twists were all story points that I would expect to keep a narrative from getting boring. It is by no means bad, but it certainly did not affect me in a way anywhere close to Spec Ops: The Line. The gameplay of this title is fairly shallow. There's only a handful of actual mechanics dealing with crafting implants, manipulating bar patrons with drinks, and the final chapter with Brandeis infiltrating the corporate headquarters. I did enjoy the game of selecting the right choice and how to extract information from bartenders, but you get the hang of that fairly quickly. Outside of the game's final act, there's very little in the way of actual, real gameplay. I really enjoyed the small cast of characters that you're introduced to and have to interact with. Donovan serves as a great avatar for the player as he's straightforward and level-headed. No matter what choice you make in conversations, they all sound like something Donovan would say based on what little you know about him. The people you interact with have wildly different personalities, and you have to deal with them in a variety of ways. The drinks you pour for them become more complex as you try to manipulate their mood through alcohol. Brandeis is definitely the more adventurous of the two main characters, and his piece at the end of the game is fairly interesting. Using his voice modulator, you must mimic the various characters in which you have biographic data for to trick other characters into revealing sensitive data that progresses the plot, all while sitting deep within corporate headquarters. This serves as a major piece of the story, as the knowledge gained from Donovan's escapades at the club probably wouldn't be enough to allow Brandeis to completely infiltrate corporate systems. I also enjoyed some of the philosophy that is explored in a lot of the conversations. A lot of subjects are touched related to the power of corporations and what people should be able to do to themselves. Those conversations generally take place between you as Donovan and corporate employees or Akara, the neutral android. The different perspectives were presented pretty organically. No matter where you might fall in an argument, both sides are presented in a way that you could imagine someone saying to you in a bar somewhere. There were times in these types of discussions that got a bit too ideological at the fault of the writer, but I'll get to that later. Choices. This game has a web of choices, and things you do and say most certainly affect the plot. I always appreciate this type of device and narrative-driven games. It makes me as a player think harder about my decisions, rather than just blowing through them knowing it won't make any difference. Looking at you, Telltale. If you do pick up this game, know that from the very beginning, everything you do matters. My criticisms start off with a small nitpick. There were typos in the dialogue of this game. I understand that this is a very small team, but something like that is something I can't forgive even from an indie developer. A title that forces the player to spend the majority of their playtime reading dialogue really doesn't have an excuse for having misplaced words. An extra look through the scripts would have been appreciated as the final polish was being put on. I do have to take some shots at some of the writing. While overall the story kept me engaged and interested, crucial for a narrative-focused experience like this, there were points that the writer pushed far too heavily on their own biases and ideology. Being someone who is moderately politically aware of both the national climate and the climate within the gaming industry, this immediately made me cognizant of the writer and actually made me think, oh, well, I know exactly what kind of political views this person has. That is the mark of an inexperienced writer. If you are crafting a fictional story for the purposes of entertainment, I should be able to enjoy that story without knowing anything about you. I have absolutely no idea what George R.R. Martin's political leanings are, even though I've read every completed book of A Song of Ice and Fire. That is a writer who kept his biases well hidden when crafting the amazing story that he has. The writer of the Red Strings Club, however, is not as disciplined. I love that there didn't really seem to be wrong answers, as no matter what you may think about the topics discussed in the game, there were certainly arguments that would support your stance. Certain choices on specific subjects, however, made clear to you that the writer disapproves of your decision. It's really a shame that these moments existed because they pulled me completely out of the story. Overall, I enjoyed the Red Strings Club. I have my misgivings with the writing, but the roughly 3.5 hours I spent playing it kept me mostly engaged. The gameplay is fairly shallow, and it's hard for me to give a lot of high praise for a title that is only a few steps removed from a visual novel. Still, considering the low price point, I'd say it's a pretty good game for someone who wants to just relax and enjoy a good cyberpunk story. I'm giving the Red Strings Club a 6 out of 10. Thanks for watching. What did you think of the Red Strings Club? Let me know down below or over on Twitter. If you'd like to support the channel, why not hit that thumbs up button and subscribe. Until next time.